All right, everybody. I am here for the discussion. Thanks for coming out, those that bothered to watch the trailer. Fair warning, things often happen whenever I try to use this particular program. So if I blink out or something weird happens, please hold tight and I'll make a new stream. It's pretty easy to do that. But, let me just check the comments to make sure my sound is working here. I believe it is. I checked it multiple times over, but again, with the normal setting, without the chat and without the complexities, it's easier to see if the sound's working. But I believe it is. Um, so this is the broadcast, and I think we're good to go. So I'm Chris Poulos, and welcome to the Thomas the Hermit channel. I usually help Thomas with a lot of things. As you can see from, you just scroll back a bit, you'll see a video called What is Contemplative Prayer? That is a show I do with Thomas, Utopiana, and we discuss things together, um, current events, things going on in the church and politics, etc. But this show is for the more everyday, common denominator struggles we all got to struggle with. And that's just the Awake Show. Because I wake up in the morning every Monday and I have to trudge through life just the same as you. And I'm here to try to talk things through because usually things aren't talked out that well. I'm not even bragging. I'm just saying that people often don't like to address certain aspects of life that may be controversial or uncomfortable to talk about. Of course, I'm not talking about anything, extremely controversial in this episode. But you'd be surprised, due to peer pressure, due to cultural norms, due to people not wanting to step out of their comfort zone. Um, you'd be surprised as to how many nooks and crannies there really are in the world. That's the shame about mainstream media, and that's the first thing I want to talk about. Mainstream media. Okay, this episode about exiting the matrix is focused on the media and what it's been doing to our poor brains that have been rotting away for God knows how long, thanks to the TV and the movies. Um, so, what is exiting the matrix, and what is the matrix? I'm using the term the matrix because of the movie where the guy comes out of the computer program and he realizes he's been had by a bunch of doomsday robots. Very typical program, a typical theme for many stories these days. But the Matrix is a mentality. It's a mentality that you think as you're told to think, and you do what they tell you to do. And it's not as easy as it sounds. There's even a lot of fake red pills to get out of the Matrix. We were talking. I was talking about, and the people commenting, we were talking about Antifa and that whole punk rock culture. That's an example of a fake escape. A very superficial way of rebelling against norms, which in the end, they themselves create their own conformity. And they are also going along with some kind of program. So that's what the Matrix is. And it isn't just, there'll be a lot of videos on YouTube where people just talk about the technological singularity, how we're all getting dialed into social media and this and that. And at this juncture, it really doesn't matter because everyone's going to social media for their business. You can't cut yourself off unless you've always been cut off and you don't rely upon it. So I'm not here to promote that kind of thing. I'm also not here to promote hyper individualism, okay? Now, I've never run into much of these types, but there are people that you run into that are like, some of them are contrarians, and it's like they just try so hard to be completely opposite of other people's opinions, and some of them may have narcissistic traits. I don't know. I mean, they're just people that are trying way too hard to be individuals. Now, that's not usually most people's problem, but I'm not promoting that because I believe in objective truth, and that means there are certain things that we should, as human beings, be able to see and understand and agree upon are, what's healthy and what isn't. So I'm not promoting that either. I'm promoting common sense. And I'm trying to appeal to the heart and the soul here and try to create a movement which will go against the misery propagated by the systems in place. But it doesn't mean, shooting up the town, starting a riot, or going off the grid or anything like that. Those are extreme, knee-jerk, unintelligent reactions to a much bigger and more complex problem. So I just want to get that out of the way. A lot of these red pill videos that talk about this stuff or get away from the matrix, or they're just knee jerk reactions, or they're just talking about how bad everything is. But haven't we had enough of about how bad everything is? That doesn't help, to be honest with you, to talk about how everything is so bad. Hi, John. Welcome. So it seems that the chat on my browser is what I can see right now. Um, so John's here. Thanks for dropping by, John. So the matrix is always shifting. The matrix, if we had gone to a time machine, what would the matrix be? The matrix would depend on the cultural norms and the beliefs of a particular society. And as someone who's into history, there's always been this problem of the status quo and what people go along with that may or may not be moral, ethically right, or even happiness inducing. You know, that's always been the case. So currently, yes, the media organizations of the TV, of the internet, of Hollywood are to blame. But there are other matrices we get caught up in as well. We can get caught up in peer pressure. We can get caught up in our own habits, in addictions, and in all kinds of things. In bad family dynamics, right? Uh, Even at your workplace, you can be caught in something like that. It's that feeling you get in your gut where something is wrong, but you also know you'll be hit upside the head if you say anything about it. So now that that's completely defined as best as I can, the first part of the media we have to talk about is the mainstream media. And the reason why I really don't like the mainstream media, it isn't because it's fake news. That was a new thing that came up. And yes, there has been a lot of fake news with political bias. There's been a lot of retractions from many companies, and they just seem to be getting worse and worse. And that's a problem. That's the first problem where, we can't be objective. We want a particular political side to win over the facts. And then it's getting so bad that people that are biased are saying that they have the facts, and they say, go do your research. And what they really mean is go see what, this media organization said. You even have fact checker political sites being caught being biased and saying it's not right, but then retracting it. So it's getting pretty bad. And what do I say to that? Do I say, don't trust anything? No. I'm just saying all we have to do to fight this to be on our guard, even for those that say they have the truth and that they have the facts. All right? You just have to one up the liars. That's the only way to get out of that. But there is an issue with the fact that people's either emotional bias have them willfully avoiding information, or people are not taught how to read data at all and let's say, look at a pool of people being surveyed and say, is that a statistically significant pool of people? And where are they getting this from? Right? And what is the margin of error? And has there been a correct, does this line up with patterns in previous things? And yes, it could be talking about elections, but other things as well. And what is their control group like? Are they checking for causation or just correlation? These are important, sociological and psychological terminologies you have to know if you really want to take this stuff seriously. Um, Even within academics, okay, I went to Duke, and there were a lot of junk papers. Now, after this broadcast, I'm going to um, put a link to an example. I don't know if it was John Stossel. John Stossel's very good at this. He's exactly the kind of man we need talking like this on the internet. There's a few others, but John Stossel is all about cross-checking the news, and I think he put out a piece on junk college studies that were terribly constructed by professors and researchers that had a bias and were not very well put together and really didn't mean much. In fact, they even sent fake proposals into this journal, academic journal, that were completely made up, and it was accepted into the journal. So I guess my first contention is we have to get back to a hardcore understanding of taking on the world, right? I don't know if anyone here has read the Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys books. I did when I was a kid, the detective stories. I mean, for those that have, you know what I'm talking about. But I guess today there's like Sherlock Holmes is cool again. There's Law and Order. There's all kinds of things. There's nothing stopping you from being that kind of person. I think that is a great way of being a good citizen. It's also a great way of being a good neighbor. You know, there's no one should feel like they're doing something wrong if they're more cautious, if they take their time before speaking, if they say things like "I'll get back to you, I need to look into that," and they actually take a few days to look over information. And it's also very liberating when you find the truth because I'm not going to hide my political stance. Currently, I'm a conservative. Okay, that's what I am. But as a conservative, there's many different factions within the right that are different, and they're worthwhile listening to. And unfortunately, the left has become just pure Marxist, so I'm not really that interested. But even like things like the anarchism episode that I did with Thomas, I guess I could put that in the description as well. There's many different kinds of anarchism, and not every anarchism is about rioting and burning churches and things like that. And I would be willing to listen to an anarchist or of different kinds, as long as they're not violent. And it is an interesting experimental philosophy to discuss, just for the sake of social science. There is also the scientific mindset. We have to get back to the scientific mindset of testing hypothesis and questioning things for the sake of it, for the sake of truth. Okay, so that's how we get out of that matrix, the mainstream. So yes, I myself cross-check my own sources, and believe me, politically, I can tell you the right doesn't have it all together, or the right often misses a lot of points, and often YouTubers have more information, but even the YouTubers sometimes have their bias. It's more liberating to detach yourself from the idea of tell me what to think, tell me what to think. Now um, this goes also for what isn't being said. Okay, now that's my second point here. Um, John C's comment, he says, PhD equals piled higher and deeper. Oh boy, that's a good one, John. Thank you. Hopefully I'll get a PhD, so I hope you don't go too hard on me. But there was before the election, um, or maybe a few years before that, journalism kind of still existed. And there are so many things, for example, I always go to the Coney 2012 incident, but we were in a lockdown for coronavirus, right? And it's a real virus. Don't get me wrong. It's obvious it's a real virus. I know people that have been sick from it. But the fear is not worthy of being so. It's not, the fear for this virus does not match up with the actual results. If you look at uh, the actual death rate plus the misinformation, how they're testing, they do not test directly for the viral pathogens. They look for symptoms. And the CDC is under a lot of fire for how they've been handling this. Okay. You gotta, that's another example of it. Wear your mask, yes, but to treat your neighbor harshly or to wear your mask in the car or walking outside in the middle of nowhere, that shows that we have another matrix issue on our hands. Okay. Um, and there was a time when the news was about reporting the truth and wasn't meant to immediately tell people what to do. It was to inform people on what's happening. Boy, isn't that crazy? We're far from the Clark Kent journalist type days here. And that's very important because while the coronavirus sadly is killing people and making them very sick, there still have been for decades, at least in this country and in other places, there still are many things that vastly surpass the coronavirus in killing people. Let's go through a few examples. We still have an issue with illegal drug use. We still have an issue with crime skyrocketing, okay, especially with this whole defund the police thing happening in Minneapolis. I mean, it's organized crime, okay? Do you guys know how organized crime works? These are professionals. Now, not all criminals are organized, and some people with their social media, they'll just say, ooh, the police are gone. All right, let's go shoot up the town, right? They could be doing that. But an organized crime syndicate is a professional business. And the moment they see, I mean, they look for weak spots within a precinct of police. I'm sure they keep an eye on where the cops patrol, and I'm sure they vet to make sure there's no undercover cops in their rank. Okay, so you're going to defund the police and for one incident that turns out with the full footage may not have had anything to do with the knee on the back. The guy was just completely on drugs. Yes, the full footage of the George Floyd incident is out, by the way, so you can go check that out. Um, and so there's that. But crime isn't even. I remember when I was a kid and they would report the rapes and murders on local news, and there was that, and you'd see what was happening in Newark, New Jersey, Philadelphia. But even that was kind of the matrix because a murder is a flashy, entertaining thing. Let's be real. I'm being as real as rain here. It's like watching a NASCAR race. It's like, wow, there's some kind of villain out there and he's doing terrible things to people. I hope the cops shoot the robbers. I hope there's some kind of showdown where they find this guy and justice is served. I mean, that's exciting, especially when I was a kid. I was like, "Ooh, wow! Like, where's Batman? Who's is Batman going to come in and save the day?" Hold on, I'm just going to move my camera up a bit. I think okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so yeah, all right, there was that happening, but guess what? Car accidents and malpractice and obesity kills way more people than crime. Um, There's also suicide rates and all kinds of horrible stories about that. There's also just the suicide is coming from depression from many different areas, right? There's all kinds of disease that is like self-induced disease. There's there's a whole pharmaceutical industry uh, profiting off of selling pills instead of the Hippocratic oath, and what doctors used to do, trying to get the patient healthy first or to stay healthy. Now, some of that is coming back. My mom watches some new up and coming doctors who are about health first. But there, and why do we not care about these things? You see, because it's not flashy. It's not. There's not a boogeyman out there. It's just human self-destruction and misery. Okay, but it's a life is a life, and it's very sad. See, now I'm touching on another part, which will be episode 3, which the matrix can be yourself. The matrix can be your own, wants and needs and self-love that blind you from the people around you and from truth. All right, and so that's an example of, people want to see their TV, and they don't really are getting sucked into what's the injustice of the world, because a lot of the injustice isn't the kind of injustice they want to hear about or they are passionate about. Oh, we got another comment from John. Um, John Caucus says, even back when I was a freshman in college, they had already stopped requiring critical thinking as an undergraduate prerequisite core course. Don't want students thinking too much, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have a critical thinking course. Lucky you, John. At least you got it for like oh wait, I see. I'm sorry. You had entered and they had already gotten rid of it. I see. Well, yeah, there might be an agenda there. Okay, so there's all these. Now another thing I also think is, where's all the good news? You know, people used to at a certain point use the papers. Now I don't read the newspaper anymore, but the papers would be used to promote like fairs and community events and all kinds of things that people could go out to. And I'm sure those places are suffering. Now, when this whole coronavirus thing ends, I'm definitely going to try to get out more just to make up for time. But that's another issue. This whole thing of sitting in front of a TV, I mean, what is that doing to our real communities and interacting with people? But of course, interacting with people isn't enough. I'm talking about healthy interactions with people, okay? And things are not very healthy when you talk to people in real life. You can tell they're kind of spaced out, or they're ornery or something. Uh, or, there might be on drugs, whatever it is. People are not happy campers, okay? And, but I do think that all of this, all of what the media does is hurting us, not just in their lies, but in them not doing their job. They should be connecting us. They should be uplifting the communities. I don't know of anyone. Go ask anyone how their life has improved after watching CNN religiously. Can anyone, like, can we just stop? Everyone wants to do a survey about politics and who wants who to be president. How about let's do a survey on mainstream media? How has mainstream media have improved your life? Can we do that one? I bet it'll be abysmal. I bet some people will just stop and say, "Yeah, am I any happier since, honey? Are we any happier since we've watched NBC or Fox for the past 5 hours?" That's a good question. You know, no need to read books or anything like that. No need to, go to the local board game rally or something. No, let's just keep watching the most boring, superficial, fake thing tell us what to think and puff us up with their ego and make us think that we're also on the expedition with Wolf Blitzer to find the truth. I mean, give me a break. So, those are my thoughts on mainstream media. And, I don't think you need to tune them out completely. I do think you need to relegate mainstream media to like 30 minutes at best. And only if there's something big happening, like a disaster. But everything else that they throw out needs to be questioned and looked at like tabloids. And there's plenty of truth to be found. If you put on that Nancy Drew, Indiana Jones party boys mentality of you being your own thinker and you looking like, what are these slick back, these sleaze balls up to? That's what we should see it as. What are these sleaze balls saying today? And even if it's on your own side of the political aisle, okay? And that's another problem. Why are they only talking about politics? Politics is not the universe. Politics is not God, okay? Okay, there's more to life than politics, believe it or not. And people are affected by things that are not political. People are affected by a cultural rot, a moral decay, and a lack of the opposite, healthy living, moral living, talking about God and the commandments and prayer and good books and literature and art and being unable to go out into a nice museum because dang it, the coronavirus is worse than the Spanish flu and bubonic plague combined. You'll be coughing up blood and you'll be puking all over your grandmother's umbrella and you're gonna fall out of the two-story window flat on your face if you open that window, you're done. Like that's just what I'm talking about here. um, and so the world, there are people. For example, there are cancer survivors dying, and many other people unable to get work because of the pandemic, and because we're overly scrupulous about this. So, moving on. From the mainstream media, we have the issue with social media. Okay, that's the second part. Now, social media, I think, is it depends on what program you're using. Okay, when Facebook updated their interface and other companies followed suit, that interface where you could constantly see what other people are doing was naturally addictive. Okay, social media is actually not this like it is an artificial environment, but what's going on that makes it addictive? It is using natural dopamine bursts to make people keep clicking. Okay, so what social media is like? It's like living in a city. All right, living in a city is a lot like social media. Now, even in cities before social media existed, people were a little more chill because at the end of the day, you still had to go to work. You still had to sit down at the bench, near the city fountain. Oh, we have some internet issues here. Let me see. Okay, I think we're okay. Yeah, yeah. You have to eat your sandwich at lunch break. You you still had to have a smaller circle than what social media can offer. But I would say that there is okay. Looks like there is still streaming issues here. Let me just type in the chat if can anyone see connection issues. All right. I think we're okay. It just told me that there's no smooth streaming right now. Let me see what happens. Okay, I think we're okay. So, but after the lunch break was over, you could eventually go to bars and meet people, and it'd be very exciting. And it's always exciting to live in a city. So I think social media shouldn't be beat up on too much. It definitely, if you're addicted to it, and I'm pulling myself out of it, it's possible. It's not like you're not. It's not like a crack addiction. You can moderately distance yourself from social media to a healthy point. And I think I've got it under control. I did get sucked in when I was in college into Facebook browsing, but and YouTube browsing. I'm almost done curbing that addiction. But social media is just a projection of people's personalities into an interface that allows for many people in one room. So think of it as like this huge mass mass party, like the masquerade, and there's this big room, and everyone's there, and everyone's talking. There's all kinds of interesting people. Um, the way to address the matrix of social media. What are the social media issues? Well, the issue is that, of course, yes, people cannot relate with each other in the real life, and they feel isolated. They want to see someone that's living and breathing and talk to them. You lose a lot of the social contextual cues, um, and that would be there in real life. Sometimes you can be misunderstood over text, and as a teacher, there's actually an issue with like kindergartners. When we go back to the school year, there's going to be an issue with teachers wearing masks because children pick up on the cues from the facial expressions of the teacher, and that's very important. So there are some issues with not being able to see someone's demeanor. So in order for us to get rid of the matrix of social media, which does cause depression, we have to redirect a natural energy healthily back into real life. And it doesn't even have to include what, it doesn't have to include the whole idea of this is bad, let's get rid of all of it, or, let's redo the whole thing and turn off the internet forever. It could be done in moderation. I do think it's possible to be functioning and have a moderate amount of social media, especially, since, even before social media, people had to be wired to something. If you were working in, let's say, Wall Street, I mean, or in New York City or some big bustling city, you would have to know how to talk to people, and you'd have to have a charisma, and you'd have to have social skills and know when to draw a line. You'd have to get into arguments. Imagine if you look, there's a video of people working at Wall Street in the 80s. Oh my goodness. The personalities in that office, just the raw experience of dealing with thousands upon thousands of people every day, from different countries. I'm sure it was very exciting. And they may not be texting and typing, but they were calling like crazy. Um, so, what I usually see when people say, "Oh, I have such a problem with social media, and it's like it's so garbage, and it's like it's the crappiest thing ever, and I just wish you did something better than this." Well, to be honest, it seems as if their friend circles lack quality, and their conversational skills are lacking, and they're very awkward, and they're not taught how to be social. And I think it's just a continuation of insecurities that were there before. When I used to go to, and I was an insecure kid in high school, so I would know. It took a while for me to get over my insecurities. Um, but high school and college, you still see a lot of those insecurities. Now, what social media does is it allows insecure people to kind of talk without any sort of backlash or nothing too bad. And that's why I think you have this cancel culture thing happening where people get upset and they want to delete or mute the other person. Because I think that's what happens when someone who doesn't have a thick skin is given the ability to speak, whereas before they would just be too scared to speak at all. So it's still kind of like this. I think there's a root there, and when the internet first started, I don't think these issues were nearly as prevalent. Um, you'd have to know the right people to talk to. John, I know you're still watching. I don't know how old you are, but were you around like when like the '90s, early 2000s internet came out? The internet had more of a library feel to it. It actually was nowhere near like what it is today. You would have to know what website to go to, and it would be usually for interesting information that someone might have uploaded, or maybe to buy something. I remember going on space.org and just looking at the new satellites, and I was super into aeronautical stuff, the new satellites and what the astronauts were up to. That was one of my favorite sites to go to. I would obsess over that. Yeah, gaming was, I think, the beginning of the social media thing. But even the gamers were pretty thick-skinned. You know, I think it was because this was before the thin-skinned stuff was happening. People could have fun on the internet. So that's my case. It's really on the inside again when it comes to social media. How you approach it. Are you afraid to be yourself? How do you have people that are also not afraid to be themselves? And is there a sense of forgiveness? Okay, and this is running again into the moral and ethical decay. Now, this is something, of course, this isn't a flashy one like, oh, is it, is abortion right or wrong, or alcoholism? Let's talk about alcoholism. Let's talk about the sexualization of children. But it's a very important thing, the idea of forgiveness and compassion, true forgiveness and compassion, not like tolerance of bad stuff or tolerance to the point of you're just allowing any, out of control person to say what they want because that's their right and that's their identity or whatever, and you can't criticize them. I'm talking about, the idea that if you're with friends and let's say there's an argument, you can agree to disagree, or you let it go, water off the back, or, you know, if someone says a raunchy joke, you're not going to rake them over the coals unless it's like completely personal and, you know, or, whatever. It's the idea that you can accept people's imperfections. That's a big problem. That's one of the see that's what I mean when I say we can't just say, "Oh, it's just the internet, man." Because the people that are having these issues on the internet already have them in the real life. Now, maybe the internet can bring it out to a greater extent, but I say there's two different kinds of people. There are people that, and I don't see them as much actually. But there's the people that like the anonymity so that they can be like, like Twitter, for example. They can like have the most insane, solipsistic arguments, and they'll yell at you if you dare to question them. They're like babies, basically, online. The babies. But they're not as prevalent as just this, like, fake Hallmark card, other group of people. A lot of them are on Facebook, where they only post perfect pictures. They never say anything remotely controversial or disturbing. They're nicey nice, 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 nice. And, a lot of them probably have opinions that are controversial in their head, but they don't want to say it. All right. I think it's pure misery to us. I think that it would be pure misery if you actually thought like a milk toast, nicey nice person all the time. Okay. That's not true. It's not true kindness or truth or compassion to be completely non-judgmental on everything you see. Now, judgmentalism is a problem if you, like I said before, if you don't have if you don't accept and forgive other people's failings and ignorance or whatever, or disagreements. But it's a whole nother thing to say, oh, there's not a problem at all. Let's all just get along. Please don't rock the boat ever. It doesn't matter if the whole world is burning down. Okay? That is not what I'm proposing, and that is part of the big issue. A lot of those people are backing up the status quo that is bad. Okay? Just because I'm saying you should be kind, compassionate, forgiving, and you should be a force of good, not a force of complacency, not a force of indifference. Okay? And of course, be balanced. Don't be a zealot. But being a force for good is what I'm saying. Being a person of action. Okay, again, the Nancy Drew, Sherlock Holmes, Hardy Boys. I need another good example of like a detective. But we need more detective types out there. John C. Yep, totally. Early internet, very little vitriol, was mostly just an information resource. So yes, John remembers. And I also kind of see the social media problem kind of like before the internet. I would say the closest thing to social media was the saloon, okay? The bar. That would be the closest thing to a social to social media. Okay, so you had alcohol, we all know, helps people relax, it lowers their inhibitions, and that's why people drink because they know that they can connect with people easier. It's in a different way, but I see a similar dynamic when people are a little bit tipsy at a bar, okay? And what happens? Well, you have the people that can handle a drink or two and not lose it. But, the same people I'm talking about that have insecurities often end up alcoholics or getting, into that danger zone. And why is that? Because they naturally lack the ability to be themselves so much that that alcohol was their like, they had it's like um steroids for your personality, basically. And if you're only taking steroids to have personality muscle, you're, you're going to deflate once you're off the steroids. So if you go into any AA meeting, right? They have to work out their demons and they have to find out ways to be themselves and to get healing without using alcohol to feel like a cool person. Now, guess what? I'm kind of in that camp. I'm not an alcoholic, but I every day, I'm very much into prayer, and I get healing slowly but surely from that problem to be more myself. And it's a lot harder than you realize. This is called growing up. This is called the proper path to maturity. And the earlier you tackle it, the better off you'll be. Fortunately, I started tackling it around my 20s. I wish I could have been tackling it before. And that's why our educational system is such a mess. And I think my next episode will be just on education because that is such an underestimated problem because we're not raising children to have character and integrity and confidence and charisma. You darn right there's going to be a bunch of alcoholics and drug addicts running around or people that are just completely uncomfortable with themselves and nervous and social anxiety up the wazoo, right? And then you just have to throw in, of course, the lack of two-parent households. Oh boy, that surely won't do any damage. Daddy and mommy not being home, or one parent, or just a single parent who's bad. Oh, I'm sure that doesn't do anything. Right? So if we have a Lord of the, it's by the grace of God that it isn't any worse. The more I think about how character building is so abandoned in our society, it's like it's a miracle we still have an intact society. That must be God's grace. It has to be. I mean, I don't know how we're still operating here. Um, so that's the second. That's my commentary on social media. Oh, my chat's finally working. My other chat, my explicit. I can see the channel chat. I don't know why the stream chat finally worked. John C says Marxists targeted the education system in the U.S. for a complete takeover. They have mostly succeeded. Yes, and they succeeded in the most dastardly way yet. Cultural Marxism, which is kind of what I'm talking about, where you have, I think it's a chicken and egg thing. Was it the Marxists who implemented the division, or are we inherently tribalistic people? I think it's that we're inherently tribalistic people, and the current Marxists believe in that sin. They believe in tribalism, and tribalism itself may not in primordial inherent drive to find people that are like you and to clump together people that agree on things. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But you would get these cliques, and the cliques still exist today, folks. Don't get me wrong. Let's not get it twisted. The cliques of like high school still exist in their own forms. It's one thing to hang around people that you jive with personality wise or you find that you can trust, but it's another thing to do it out of a spirit of division or a spirit of writing people off just for the sake of them not being in your crew. Okay? Again, that goes back to what I previously said. And unfortunately, now we're being forced into a catch-22 where even though I don't want to be divided, I often do have to take myself away from certain groups because I know that they're against my beliefs to the point of not wanting to talk about it. Okay? If people were more into just having a debate civilly, then of course I can talk to tons of people. I really I can talk. I love learning about other cultures and religions, even though I may not believe in some of those belief systems. It's very interesting to me. I've always been that guy. And of course, here in the United States, there's all kinds of differentiations between where people live and how that affects them. Oh, there's all kinds of interesting people you run into. But the social media cancel culture thing, that is an issue because it's perpetuating that thing. Anyway, I've rambled on a lot about social media. So, last big issue. Oh, it seems we have some connection issues. It's telling me I have some. Oh, we're back. Whew. You never know with this thing. Sometimes it gets a little sensitive. So that the third media that must be discussed, that is such a pain. You have to walk in. John, I'm sure you have to suffer through this. You walk in and you hear some generic hip hop beat that you've heard a billion times before, or a pop song, and it's over and over and over, and you hear the same music, and then okay, I can't tell if I'm live or not because I'm gonna have to just go with my camera. Okay. Just drop a comment if I'm going in and out. You hear the same junk. Even if you like the song, it's junk now to you because it's been going in and out of your ears. And then you go look at the music videos of this stuff. And it's like pure sex, money, and power worship. And it's just like it's the same thing. And then you look up the fact that it's owned by, like, first of all, there's like this Swedish guy. Okay, thanks, John. I'll just disregard these warning, these red alert signs I'm getting on the control panel here. The Starship Enterprise here has been a little bit leaky, to say the least. I don't know what's wrong with the XSplit right now, but I'll just disregard. And it's like, it's written by, most of the music is written by this one guy from Sweden, I believe. I'll get his name, but he's a producer, and a few companies run it. And then you're like, and it's like, and then you see, especially with the women, they're like super into the mainstream pop and hip hop because they like to dance or whatever. And it's like, then they start talking like their favorite celebrity, they start idolizing it, and you just can't help but wonder. And this is a question I'm posing. Is it because they don't have a sense of self and they want to find an identity in living vicariously through these people because they seem cool and powerful and sexually attractive? Or is it simply that, we have a serious issue with our priorities? And again, in order to actually escape the matrix, you have to start kind of with yourself again. Okay? You have to start believing, and I'm telling you right now, I'm going to tell you something right now. I run into some really great people. I run into people that are great on the HHL, which is the Facebook group I help run, on different friends. I run into people that are just very interesting. Um, I'm in New Jersey, and I'm gonna tell you something. Sometimes run into these people, and I think to myself, you would be a more dynamic actor than a lot of these actors, or you are such a more interesting and cool person than Cardi B or whatever. And I wish people could realize that a lot of these people, one, are not, they're propped up to be cool, but they really have nothing interesting to say. They're very uninformed people. If you actually look at their interviews, or you check on the tabloids, their lives are kind of messy. They're not the most attractive people in the world. They just have like these high definition cameras checking them out, and making them look good, and all this makeup and stuff. And they're not charismatic angels. Like this one girl, like Billie Eilish, all right? She's this Gen Z teen girl who got propped up by the music industry, and a lot of the girls are into her, and she's like into this. She's kind of this goth person. She's not really goth music, but she dresses like one. I don't know what to call her. She's like some kind of synth kind of musician. Okay, now she has a personality, and I may not care much for that kind of personality. It seems a bit forced to me. But why is she like the number one? Because she does, as far as I know, her videos are not as sexualized as the others, like Cardi B. Oh my goodness, what a disaster! What a burning train wreck to hell Cardi B has been. Um, but the reason why everyone flocks to her is because she has something other than sex, money, and power. She has an interesting style. It's different. She talks about her feelings. She doesn't take herself that seriously. Um, okay, John, thanks for coming out. And I don't care for music, but that's an example of what I'm saying. It took just one teenage girl who just had a slightly creative style to her. From I don't know where she came from. She came from YouTube or TikTok. I think she was an internet celebrity beforehand. It took one of her in the music industry to challenge all of these people shaking their butts and being practically naked on the video for the umpteenth time. And I talk to people I'm a teacher. I talk to my students who watch these music videos. They themselves kind of laugh at that stuff. Now they shouldn't be watching it. This stuff is like basically pornography, for the public. But even they know that it's like absolutely, just disgusting and a complete caricature of what a woman or a man should be like. But they watch it and they listen to it because that's what everyone's supposed to listen to, right? And sometimes, if you go to the right parties, if someone puts on music that is not as well known, that is much more talented, that isn't owned by these corporations, you can try out internet radio to find these. Spotify, I think, also counts. But if you actually look at other genres, other musicians that are not completely propped up by the system, that are in like the tier two levels of popularity, or tier three, they blow them away. Usually the avant-garde musicians that do their own thing. Another example was this Icelandic musician, very famous, named Björk. I can't ever say her name correctly, but she was a big one in the 90s. She's still alive. And she literally did her own thing. Weirdest videos and music ever. Really good music, like really talented music. Um, but because she did her own thing, she would hit the billboard. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this whole Hollywood matrix is actually inferior to the common man. I think it's more edifying to talk to people and get to know them, than to get to know these celebrities. And if we could just understand that and incorporate, this idea that we're better than them. We really are. We're not. We don't live. We don't need to live like this gaudy lifestyle that's overly expensive, and sadly there are many people that take after them. But once there's a competitor on the horizon, you'll notice that people quickly switch over away from that because it is inherently fake and superficial. And I think now the last thing that we need to realize that there is an agenda here. I don't know exactly what the agenda is, but there's obviously an agenda when all you sell is money, sex, and power, and you get hundreds and millions of views, and there's like product placement and corporations making money off of this and that, and there's lots of contracts involved and all kinds of stuff. And then you have, all of this weird sexual scandals and things being uncovered. There's a documentary called Out of the Shadows about Hollywood. It's not for the faint of heart, but you can check that out. There's some people coming out saying there's like some seriously messed up stuff happening behind the scenes, just to give it an insight of the character of the people running um, these industries. I mean, and then you have, the hip hop artists, they live in like the rappers live in mansions way away from the hood, but they propagate the hood lifestyle, which has been a detriment to the black communities and just the ghettos throughout the world. Okay. So there's something going on with that as well. And again, why do you need to sell your soul? You can be an attractive, successful person without being, someone that completely objectifies themselves or objectifies other people. You can have a sense of dignity. And I'm telling you, you can completely outdo, these people have very miserable lives, these celebrities. They just have a lot of cameras. I mean, you run into someone with actual personality, it's not even a remote comparison. I mean, and then you like when they're caught off camera in their interviews or whatever, it's like they just sound like normal schmoes. A lot of them are like, oh yeah, it was really interesting shooting that movie. They talk very like much like normal people because they're mortal human beings. They just have professional script writers and they get to do takes over after takes after takes of the dance move or they have their CGI music video, but that's not real. And they're being challenged by and I hope YouTube goes back to its original form, because there are people that make YouTube videos that are more entertaining on the fly. Hopefully I'm going to be one of them one of these days. But yeah, like there's this new culture of internet celebrityhood where it's just people that just happen to be have great personalities and they can throw together a video. So I hope this is all coming to an end. I think the third part, this Hollywood thing, is actually coming to an end, and the music industry is the last to go. The music industry needs to be challenged by other musicians and by people that are just like, you know, I don't want to live like Cardi B. I don't want to be seen as a sexual object, like a clown. I don't want to be seen like a clown for people's entertainment. You know, and she has daughters. Like, what the heck's wrong with her? I wouldn't, I wouldn't want my mom doing that in front of literally everyone. Um, so those are my points. This is the first episode of Exit the Matrix. Um, I may return to it for the third episode on the last few things I talked about. But the next episode, which will probably be Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, will be my original time, will be about the educational system. And we're getting a little bit more on the local level. So again, since I'm proposing this kind of heroic Nancy Drew, be the change you want to see in the world idea, we got to talk about the institutions that we all have to deal with, that we have no choice to deal with, what's going on with them. And we have to start talking about our ethos, okay? We have to start talking about what we need, what we can stand on to help us stand our ground and be ourselves. And that involves spirituality. That involves prayer and communing with God, because God is the ultimate. Um, so if even if you don't believe in God, I will explain and build the case as to why he's so important to get out of this. And it isn't just, oh, you need to believe in God because he's God and he's all powerful and he'll heal you of everything. No, he's very important in this ability to in this whole idea of taking back the culture and making the normal person matter over these souped up weirdos that control everything today, these elites. So that's it coming out. Those that